This is Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis.
Welcome to Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis. It's a best of edition this weekend. Kind of busy and tied up with a couple of other sporting obligations, and in particular it's auto racing. So we're doing a little best of this weekend, but we got you covered on some of our best segments in the recent weeks, and we're looking forward to hearing them again. And also looking forward to hearing from you on our social media channels at Hockey Unfiltered, at Todd Lewis Sports. Of course, you can always check out our Facebook page as well. Leave some comments for us there. We try to post some interesting articles along, and you can check out all episodes of the program via podcast. Subscribe through iTunes, iHeartRadio, and of course they're available on our website and through the Hockey Unfiltered app, which is available now for download. So how about those Eastern and Western Conference Stanley Cup playoffs? They have been something special so far, and I was mentioning this a couple of days ago on one of our special pregame editions that we've been doing for the Tampa Bay Lightning Power Play Network in advance of Eastern Conference final games, that we didn't really have the map or the GPS program destined to reach this point as planned. Now, normally, if you're using a GPS, it takes you the quickest possible route, but we've kind of taken a circuitous route, especially in the Eastern Conference, about what's been going on. A week ago, everyone was panicked. Everyone was worried about those Tampa Bay Lightning. My goodness, they have dropped 2 games at home. What's going to happen now? They have to go to Washington. There's been things that haven't been good. The penalty kill hasn't been good. Vasilevsky has let in a couple of goals that you'd think weren't great. The defensive structure wasn't really very good. Well, it turns out all they needed to do was leave the state and go to Washington for a while, because it's all turned around and gone in the opposite direction for the Tampa Bay Lightning in their series against the Washington Capitals. Amazing through 4 games that we haven't had a home team victorious yet. Really kind of strange, but we have seen the best of both teams. We have seen the exposed areas of both teams as well. First couple of games in Tampa, it was the Lightning that struggled on the power play. The Capitals were able to take advantage. They scored power play goals, and poor defensive structure by the Lightning was terrible, and it allowed the Capitals to victimize them. Shift to Washington, reverse roles. I didn't think Braden Holtby was bad. I didn't think that the Washington Capitals made a lot of mistakes, but the ones that were made were capitalized on, especially power play goals. And in game number 4, well, the serious goal that decided it wasn't a power play goal, but it had only expired by 6 seconds. And bad defensive choices. How about that blind pass from Michael Kempny, the defenseman that so many of us have talked about and said was such a good acquisition at the trade deadline and had been such a nice stabilizing force on the pair with John Carlson for the Caps defense? Well, he makes a terrible pass, and it winds up in the back of the net. And that's what we saw from the Tampa Bay Lightning a number of times. Poor choices, poor decision-making, poor execution, and the puck winds up in the back of the net. We saw the same from the Washington Capitals. And now, who's feeling the heat? Who's feeling the pressure? I'm pretty sure it's the Washington Capitals after dropping both games at home. We went through a number of historical statistics as we went into this series and looked ahead as to what was coming. The Caps had previously been up 2-0 in a series after winning the first 2 games on the road, and then headed back home for game number 3. And in both instances, they lost those series, the 96 series to Pittsburgh and the 2003 series to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Uh-oh. That's time for a little worry, concern, dare I say, panic. And this stat that I caught last night on Twitter, since '85, on 10 occasions, the Caps have been up 2-0 or 3-1 in a series and lost each series. Now, that's certainly not going to make Caps hands very stable or calm heading into the weekend. They know they're coming back for a game number 6. We'll wait and see how it develops. But again, on Thursday's program, the pregame show on the Tampa Bay Lightning, where I said I expected this series to go long. I expect it to be a 6 or 7 game series, and that's good for those of us that are fans of the series. And that's the best thing, is that we're going to have a long series. We're going to have a couple of more games of hockey in this series, and I'm anxious to see what happens next. It's who can minimize your problems and still capitalize on the opportunities. Shout out to Andrei Vasilevsky as well, who played an enormous game in game number 4, particularly in the second period. The Tampa Bay Lightning were clinging by their fingernails to the cliff, and they were so close to falling off on a number of occasions. But the goaltender, the one they counted on all season, the one I said I wasn't worried about moving forward into the series, he held them in. He was the rock when he needed to be, made the saves. Did he steal the game? I guess in some senses he did. He was there and made the save because Washington doubled the chances of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Not that they had twice as many shots exactly, but they had a lot more shots and they had a lot more scoring chances than the Tampa Bay Lightning did, and he was there to shut them down when it was needed. In turn, the Lightning did take advantage of the opportunities. Poor choices, poor execution, and bad defensive mistakes by the Washington Capitals wound up in the back of the net. So we head to Tampa for 5 and then back to Washington for 6. We'll see where we are. Maybe this will be the Game 7 of the third round. We've had one in each of the first 2 rounds. Maybe this series goes to 7 as well. Oh, it's good for hockey fans. And out west, it's been similar kinds of back and forth in the series as well. In game 1, everybody's thinking, oh, this is it. It's going to be a short series. The bubble has burst on the Vegas Golden Knights. There's no way that they can recover from this. Oh, and then they got to game number 2, and it was Vegas doing what Nashville did to the Winnipeg Jets in their own building and defeating them with a very solid, structured road game. And then the series shifts back to Vegas. And boy, oh boy, they put on a show, as Vegas can do. And Marc-Andre Fleury, well, he's done what Marc-Andre Fleury has done on numerous occasions. It's wonderful to see how much love Fleury has been getting this season as being the rock for the Vegas Golden Knights. If you hadn't missed such an extended period of time because of the injury, the concussion that he suffered early on in the season, he'd certainly be getting some consideration for MVP. But it's nice to see a nice person get so much attention and focus for the great game he is playing and the great things that he has been doing, and the number one player that he has become of that franchise, the face of the franchise. Remember, it was just a few years ago in Pittsburgh. Yes, he struggled during the playoffs and had difficulty stopping pucks. There were people on this program suggesting, oh, that's it, it's over. They got to buy him out of his contract. There's no way that he can recover. Well, I'd have taken Marc-Andre Fleury then, and everybody will be taking him now because he has been sensational. And I know Marchessault has scored a bunch of goals. I know Carlson has scored a bunch of goals. But you got to think, if Vegas keeps moving forward, that he's going to be the leading contender for the Conn Smythe Trophy once they do get into the Stanley Cup finals. We're going to be interested to see what happens. There's good segments coming up on our Best Of program today. We're looking forward to it. We'll hear from Emily Kaplan. That'll be terrific. We'll hear from Scott Burnside. And also, there's a story we brought you a little bit earlier in the season that I think you're going to want to hang around for. It involves the Pittsburgh Penguins and one of the Pens fans, and Kelly Sowatsky, who is seeking an organ transplant. It is worth the time and investment to listen to that segment one more time. Looking forward to a great weekend of hockey. Back with Best Of programs this weekend. We will return with another live pregame edition of Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis Monday afternoon, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 12:30 Pacific on the Tampa Bay Lightning Power Play Network. We'll be streaming it live at hockeyunfiltered.com as well as on the Hockey Unfiltered app. You can check out all of our podcasts at these locations as well. Looking forward to it. Oh, I got to mention this before we go. There was another incident of a mistaken penalty call in the game on Thursday between the Caps and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, it was a mistake made in that it looked like the wrong player was going to be put into the penalty box. There was a TV timeout at the time, and Barry Trotz said, you got the wrong guy. It's Victor Hedman that committed that trip. glance at the replays. The officials were on the headset with the office in Toronto, and you know what? They made the switch, and they got the call right. Now, this, of course, brought about a whole other argument of whether or not video should be reviewed or should be used to review and make sure the call is right. I'm really not sure what the downside is. I've seen so much comment on social media and had discussions with traditionalists, if you want to call them that. I prefer to call them people that are stuck in the past and are resistant to change at every opportunity, because this is always the way it has been done. If we can do it in an efficient manner and get the call correct. It was during a TV timeout. How did that disrupt the game? How did that bog down and slow the game down to a snail's pace, as some were criticized? Oh, mistakes are made. Mistakes are always made. There's hundreds of them in the game. We have to live with it. Well, no, we don't. If there is the ability to correct the mistakes efficiently and move forward with the correct call, why wouldn't we want to do that? Granted, I'll give you that there should be specific parameters of how it's done. This is being kind of done now for the second time in a bit of a haphazard fashion. I agree that, okay, let's formalize the process. But let's move forward, people. This is 2018. Let's use the tools at our disposal and make sure we get the calls right. Yeah, it kind of worked against the Lightning in that they got one of their best penalty killers, Victor Hedman, stuck in the box for 2 minutes, but it was the correct call. This is what we should be seeking to achieve, is getting the calls right. I am not suggesting video review on every play, every penalty, every offside, every hook, every hold, but let's use it where it can be done quickly and efficiently and doesn't disrupt the flow of the game. Sure, let's write out the specific set of criteria, but there's a lot of areas it can be used. It can make the game better. Oh, but there's hundreds of mistakes in a game. Well, why wouldn't we want to correct them? That's the argument that gets me so riled up. And those that quickly dismiss it and ridicule it as, oh, so you want to review everything. Not suggesting that, never have. Let's use it where it benefits everyone. At Hockey Unfiltered, at Todd Lewis Sports, our Twitter and Instagram handles. Enjoy our Best Of program this week. We'll be back with a live show on Monday afternoon on the Tampa Bay Lightning Network Power Play and also hockeyunfiltered.com in advance of game number 6 of the Eastern Conference Final. It's going to be a fun couple of days in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Enjoy it. Welcome back. It's the Saturday edition of Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis, here every Saturday and Sunday, live at 11. Streaming live on the Hockey Unfiltered app, powered by Primetime Radio. Busy program today. We'll look back at the 2 games from Friday night. We'll look ahead to the Washington Capitals and Pittsburgh Penguins, as well as the Winnipeg Jets and Nashville Predators on Saturday evening. Both of those series are even at 2 apiece. I've been really enjoying a lot of the work on ESPN.com from Emily Kaplan this season. She's got a whole bunch of interesting pieces just in the last week or two that I've really enjoyed reading, and I'm happy that she's able to join us. You can follow her on Twitter at Emily Kaplan. Emily, let's start, I guess, with the whole Bruins and Tampa series. I thought it was a captivating game, and in a way, it was kind of a distraction to have all of the other outside nonsense that went on in this game.
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you for the kind words. And yeah, I was at the game last night, and look, if you want to know what kind of test Brad Marchand is, consider the Lightning are on a 3-game winning streak. They just won an overtime game on the road. They're 1 win away from their 3rd conference final appearance in 4 years. And their locker room was somber, and all they had to do was talk about Lickgate and Brad Marchand licking Ryan Callahan, as well as some officiating. So I think that kind of speaks to the game last night. The series probably went the way people thought it would go, in the sense that the Lightning have been the strong team they have been all year. But it's definitely been full of a lot of distractions.
Yeah, it's a surprise series to me in that the Lightning have taken a 3-1 series lead. Yes, they've been strong all year, but Boston was sensational in the second half of the season, especially. I thought this was going to be a much closer series and that we would have a 6 or 7 game series as we will with the other 3. And if you want to know what kind of pest Brad Marchand has been, I guess it's ineffective because the Tampa Bay Lightning are up 3-1.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Yeah, I mean, I picked the Bruins to win the series, I'll be honest, and I did think it was closer because it's the two top teams in the East. The Bruins have showed so much resilience this year, but it seems like it's all coming down for them. And I think a lot of it is they're probably dealing with a lot of injuries. Like Jake DeBrusk last night was in the lineup. He just didn't look like he had a pep in his step.
Yeah, he took a hit at one point in the game last night too, and you could see that he was laboring and getting up. And I'm just not sure what Boston can do now to focus on Game 5 and try to get a victory, because they had their chances, they had their opportunities, and now to try to let's forget about 6 and 7, but just to win Game 5 is an enormous task for this team.
It sure is, especially when they're not home anymore. And look, Bruce Cassidy did make lineup changes for Game 4. He put in Ryan Donato, who made a series debut. He also put in Brian Giunta. I didn't think either player was super effective. I'm curious to see what lineup tweaks he makes, but I think at this point he might have, passed the point of return.
Yeah. Emily Kaplan is our guest from ESPN.com. At Emily M. Kaplan is how you follow her on Twitter. I want to ask you about a number of pieces that I've seen on ESPN.com that you've put together. In fact, one I was checking out earlier today, the feature on Pierre-Edouard Bellemare of the Vegas Golden Knights. I learned so much in this piece. I had no idea, but after reading it, what a perfect fit he is for that team because of his life experiences and moving from one country to another, being unfamiliar with the language. That kind of experience made him the perfect leader for Vegas to have in their locker room to help bring this group together.
Yeah, he really embodies a lot of what this team is about. You hear the Vegas Golden Knights embracing the term misfits, right? They're all spare parts. At some point, they were told they were not needed anymore, or a team wanted somebody else better, and that's how they all ended up in Vegas. And Pierre Bellemare's journey to get there is just so improbable. He grew up in France, where literally his own GM on the French national team told him, stop dreaming of the NHL. It's not going to happen. And so for him to get to that point, make his way to Sweden, work his way through the Swedish Elite League for a very long time, and then make it to Philadelphia Flyers training camp at age 29, where he's not technically even a rookie by CBA, definition, is pretty incredible. He's such an engaging personality, and I just love the fact he's an alternate captain for that team because, like you said, there's no better fit.
And to give up medical school to try to make that dream come true. What a bold choice.
It really was. And his mom, and I told him this, just sounds like an awesome woman. And look, because the hockey and the NHL seemed like such a far-fetched dream, she really stressed education. It was a single-parent household. Money was a little tight. She said, what if you break your leg tomorrow? So he's obviously a bright guy. He started his first year of medical school. He wanted to be a chiropractor, and always just figured he would fall back on that. And now I'm not sure he needs to.
Yeah, I think he's doing okay, and his NHL career is working out all right as he's arrived in Vegas. But it leads to another point too, that the arrival of the National Hockey League in Vegas, it seemed like it was a good idea. The season ticket drive was great. It was successful. Vegas getting off to such a good start in the season. It's helped build the audience and helped build the enthusiasm and excitement for the team. But just the response from the city that they're getting thousands of people coming out to their practices is remarkable.
The practice thing is insane to me. It's funny. It was kind of this novelty at one point of, wow, look at all these people coming, to see, a very limited piece of NHL action, aka NHL players skating in circles. But it keeps happening and happening. Remember when they had their fan fest in the middle of the season and thousands of people showed up in downtown Vegas? Like, they just keep exceeding expectations. And look, I think what they've done best is they know they're in a city of distractions and glittering lights, and they say we're distraction too. We're a really fun event to go to. They totally culture Vegas, and if anyone's been to a game, they know what I'm talking about. Like, it's different. They've got this pregame ceremony that feels like a medieval times ripoff. They've got really fun Jumbotron segments. There's a marching band that's like glow in the dark perched up there. It's a fun time.
Can you buy those LED glasses? I've talked about that the last couple of weeks. I'd buy a pair and wear them in a second. I love those things. But again, that's embracing the city and the personality of it and reflecting it through the team.
It sure is. And something really interesting about Vegas is over the summer, Bill Foley took a caravan out and they sent it to Montana and Utah and Idaho, and those are areas of their TV distribution area, and they were trying to, do goodwill and say, like, let's make these all Golden Knights fans. And it almost felt like they weren't sure what kind of community they would be able to find in Vegas, because we know it's a transient community. But at every game, they have this thing where it's like, chant if you're a tourist, chant if you're a local. And every single time, the local chant seems like it's so much louder.
That's awesome. And they've also been sending out shirts too to fans farther away with the blank spot, getting them to write in that they're Vegas fans from wherever. I think that's a great idea.
It sure is, yeah. And that's really cool, because the thing with the T-shirts you're talking about, that's over countries all over the world. I can't remember the number of countries, but it was not insignificant.
That's fantastic. Emily Kaplan is with us, at Emily M. Kaplan, to follow her on Twitter. Great contributor to ESPN.com. So we'll jump ahead to another series now. And I love, it was fun, but it was a little bit serious too. The piece that you did about what it takes to smuggle a catfish into a game, into a Nashville Predators game. And it goes back and gives a little history of the catfish and the Pittsburgh Penguins in the Stanley Cup game last year.
Yeah, it sure does. So I was lucky enough to be hooked up with Catfish Jake, who is famous in Nashville, infamous everywhere else. He is the guy that got arrested in Pittsburgh for throwing an instrument of crime onto the ice and disrupting a meeting. But look, wondered, okay, we know this is a tradition, but like, how do you physically buy that catfish, and like, how do you bring it into the arena? Because it's a dead fish. It smells, it's big, it's clunky. So Jake was kind enough to take me to Little Fish Mart in Germantown neighborhood of Nashville, and meet me an hour before the game to watch him literally stuff it into his pants. It was an eye-opening exercise in a brazen attitude, and it was awesome, and it was really cool to see, and another fan community that just embraces, who they are as a community, something kind of quirky and fun. It's Nashville, and relates it to hockey.
Yeah, and we've talked about the atmosphere in Nashville, in the atmosphere in Vegas, and some of the other cities in the National Hockey League. But this again is just something that I think is starting to grow, and I think fans everywhere are understanding it and appreciating it. I think the atmosphere in all the buildings has been really good in this round of the playoffs, and I think that's something that I want to see more of, more personality and just more excitement as part of the game day experience.
Yeah, it is really neat to see the teams that are left, because each of them does feel like it has a unique atmosphere. Like, the visuals in Winnipeg are insane. You think of how hungry that city has been for an NHL team in that extended absence, and how much they're appreciating it right now. It's kind of a very old school, no frills, just pure hockey barn. Then you've got a place like Nashville, or we've got a place like Vegas, which is a little different. It's not a traditional hockey hotbed. And Tampa, which I should give a shout out to, because they've been one of the most successful Sun Belt expansion teams to really integrate with the community. And they do a great job filling that arena as well.
Yeah, no question. You're right about Winnipeg, and it's not the biggest building. In fact, it's the smallest in the NHL. But everyone wearing the white inside the building, it's something special about that. It's maybe the greatest sense of community in terms of the remaining franchises.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, and you just see it. It's not even, like you said, it's a small arena, so you see all of those fans pouring outside too, or in downtown Winnipeg, just to catch a glimpse of them.
Also, in that series with Nashville and Winnipeg, I really enjoyed the piece that you did profiling AJ Malesko. I was watching a little bit of the Olympic coverage and hearing her work on the women's game with Kenny Albert, and I thought, she's really good. I haven't really heard a lot of her work before. I think it would be really good to have her doing some NHL games. And 20 minutes later, Kenny Albert is reading the promo saying, oh, she's going to be doing the Boston and Detroit game. And I'm really happy that NBC has started to use her more, because I like her insights. She's smart. She knows the game. It's not about anything else except what's going on the ice. And the other part of it too is that she doesn't want to be known for being a woman doing a hockey game. She wants to be known for giving good information, and that's the best part of this whole thing.
Yeah, I love that. I really, she's someone I look up to just because of the way she handles herself. And it was something really interesting she told me in our interview. She was like, look, I'm confident in my knowledge of hockey. I've been around it long enough. I know hockey. And look, if you look at her resume, she sure knows hockey. She's a Patty Kazmar Award winner at Harvard. She was on the first Olympic U.S. hockey team, on that one gold in Nagano, then again in Salt City. She's so decorated, and it just has such insight to the game. And she's like, as you said, when people listen to me, I don't want them to remember they're listening to a woman, talk about hockey. I want them to say this: they're just two hockey people in the booth talking hockey. And look, when I look at her as an analyst, I'm not saying she's good for a woman. I just think she's a damn good analyst.
That's exactly it. I like the information that she gives. She can relate to personal experience and playing in big games, and that's what it's all about. And I hope that this is something that we'll see more of, because there are competent women that can and should be doing more on, not just on television, but in other areas of the media covering the sport as well.
Yeah, for sure. And she pointed out, which is a great point. Look, Cassie Campbell's been doing this for a while in Canada, and there's also more opportunities. Women now. We see one of the Lamoureux twin sisters on NHL Network. Megan Duggan is doing a couple things with the Bruins. So there's opportunities out there, and I think there will be more and more. But like you said, we didn't see a lot of AJ Malesko because she would just do Olympics every year. And being a broadcaster is all about getting reps. So every 4 years it's not getting reps. So I love the fact that she's getting more exposure on NBC. And when you keep that in mind, without, with very limited experience, she details in the piece her tryout with Doc Emmerich, and that was it. And then she had no training and was just sent to the Olympics. It's even more impressive of how good she is.
Yeah, that's a great story that she relays about her first audition. One more quick one, if I can, Emily, before I let you go. I love the piece on Paul Martin, too, and his return, or in his struggles to get back to a regular National Hockey League gig. It was really eye-opening about what the NHL is when sometimes you get later in a career and you suffer injuries and you have to really fight your way back. I found it really captivating.
Yeah, he's such a guy you want to root for, because as he details his journey, it's been 14 years and pretty incredible. He's made the playoffs in each of the 14 seasons he's played in the NHL, but every time has led with some kind of heartbreak, and he's gone zigged when the other team zagged, and he just has all these near misses with winning. And he's really honest in reflecting on his career, kind of wondering what if, at the same time appreciative of a hockey career. And here he is with the Sharks, and look, he had to make his AHL debut at age 36. That's not easy. He had to go to the Seaboard group of Southwest after flying charters all these times. And he doesn't complain, just keeps his head up, and I admire that.
Yeah, it was a really interesting piece. That's Emily Kaplan from ESPN.com. Follow her on Twitter at Emily M. Kaplan. Please keep this coming, and I hope you'll come back and visit with us again, Emily. Thanks for the time today. Really enjoyed it.
I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily Kaplan from ESPN.com. There's a lot of really good stuff that she's been churning out this season. I'll look forward to more of it. Lots to get into from Friday night's games. Bruins go down in overtime to the Tampa Bay Lightning. They are on the verge of elimination. The Lightning will have a chance to move on from the second round of the playoffs on Sunday. Also on Friday night, Vegas Golden Knights, another victory over San Jose. 3-2. They now lead in that series. We'll get into that and much more all ahead. Ty Anderson with more on the Bruins' loss in overtime to the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's all coming up right after the break. Welcome back. It's the Saturday edition of Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis, here every Saturday and Sunday, 11 Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific at hockeyunfiltered.com. We're streaming live on the Hockey Unfiltered app, powered by Primetime Radio. Busy Saturday with 15 games on the go. Kyle Keefe, Colorado Avalanche television host, will join us later on in the program. We'll talk about the Avs and the Blues. Also joining us to set up that game, Andy Strickland, who covers the Blues for FSN Midwest. Carol Schramm, covering the Vancouver Canucks, with the story of the Sedins and their great send-off in Vancouver a couple of nights ago as they get set to play their final game in the NHL against the Edmonton Oilers later on tonight. It was a week ago in Pittsburgh that a Pittsburgh Penguins fan caught a lot of people's attention, including mine. Kelly Sowatsky is an avid Pens fan. She became turned on to the National Hockey League and hockey with getting together with her fiance, Tyler, and she brought a sign to the game that got the attention of everyone, because Kelly is in need of a kidney donor. You can follow her on Twitter at KSowatsky3. And Kelly joins us on the line now. Kelly, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We really appreciate it.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So I found out about the story last week, and I'm glad that we were able to get a hold of you. You brought the sign to the game that drew a lot of attention to your issue. You became ill a couple of years ago, and it's something that has progressed and gotten worse to the point where you're now in need of a kidney donor. Can you take us back and just kind of tell us how this all started with your illness and how it reached this point?
Yeah, so it basically goes back to Christmas Eve of 2015. I was fine all day, no symptoms. And by that evening, I was making dinner with my mom, and I started feeling very ill. And I decided I'm just going to go to bed. Maybe I'll wake up feeling better. Christmas is my favorite time of year. Just wanted to be healthy for the holiday. And within, an hour and a half, I was in the emergency room being diagnosed with a urinary tract infection that had turned septic. So they admitted me right away, and I was in the ICU for a few days. And then 2 days after Christmas, my lungs kind of quit on me. And then I was intubated and placed on a ventilator for about 12 days. And because of all the medication that they use to keep you sedated, I was unaware that my back pain was as bad as it was. So they isolated when they took me off of the ventilator. They realized how bad I was in pain still. And they isolated the area on my back, which happened to be right about the level of where your kidneys sit. So after running the gamut of just different medical tests, they decided an exploratory procedure was necessary. And they found that the septicemia from the infection had, in fact, attacked my kidneys as well. And at that point, they fixed me up. And I spent a total of 2.5 months in the hospital. The last couple weeks from that stay were in a physical therapy unit trying to relearn how to walk. And then finally I was discharged in March of 2016. And give or take, a few days here and there, but I spent numerous more days in the hospital, just being admitted for sometimes up to 2 days, sometimes up to 10 days. And it was just it was a pretty tough battle because the infection kept coming back and they couldn't figure out why. And eventually, by the end of summer that year, I was feeling pretty good. I started dating my fiance who got me into the Penguins, and life seemed great. And then over the next year, I kept continually followed up with my kidney doctor, my nephrologist, who basically was keeping an eye on my kidney function. And then in June or July of last year, it had just made a significant drop from about 70%, which is low end of average, starting to raise some question on how things are working. But it dropped to about 20% of kidney function. And then over the last 8 or 9 months since then, it has consistently dropped down to about 9 or 10% now.
Do you have to go in for dialysis at this point?
I have been very fortunate in the fact that I am not on dialysis yet.
Good.
That's different for every patient, and it really is dependent upon how you feel. They say if you can't get through, day-to-day, like typical activities, then you need to be on dialysis, and that will change your life dramatically. However, dialysis is also really rough on the body. So I made it, knowing that I'm very stubborn, I would go to that option should I need it, but I don't feel that I'm there yet. A preemptive transplant is what I'm hoping for, so I can skip that step of dialysis just because of how invasive it is and all the other hardships already kind of going on because of the kidney disease. So it's just, I'm trying to keep my life as normal as I can until I find that perfect match, that donor. So it's just kind of one of those. I probably could start it, and some of my doctors have been pushing for it, but I'm just trying to keep life normal, so I've been pushing it off.
Understandably so. Kelly Sowatsky is our guest. She is an avid Pittsburgh Penguins fan and is seeking a kidney donor. You can follow her on Twitter at KSowatsky3. And you mentioned that you met your now fiance, Tyler, and he's the one who got you interested in the National Hockey League and the Pittsburgh Penguins and fan. And that's where so much of the attention started last week with the sign that you brought to the game. How did you think that I'm going to the game, maybe I'll get some attention and maybe I will pique someone who can help me out in terms of being a kidney donor?
Yeah, well, so firstly, like the hockey community, and I've seen it just in other events that have happened. The hockey community is really just like a big family, is what I've learned. And, you know, everybody kind of comes together when there's, you know, whether it's a tragedy or a situation or some kind of a media event that needs some attention. You know, I saw the way people just even came together to support Eric Carlson and his wife when they lost their son, their unborn son. That was a tragedy. You just start to see these things that happen, and everybody just came together. And I pinpointed that even further with, I've watched the Penguins now for 2 seasons, and when they do their philanthropic events, the things that I've seen them do are just amazing. And I thought, I'm going to take my sign. So I took it. Initially, I took this even before I thought it would do much of anything, to a New Jersey Devils game in Newark when the Penguins played them back in February. And my sign was not well received, but I believe that was just because I was in enemy territory wearing a Penguins jersey. And, you know, there's a lot of Devils fans. They just didn't want anything to do with a Penguins fan. So I kind of brushed that off and said, that's really unfortunate. But in the right venue with a bunch of smiling, friendly faces around me, this is going to work. And I decided that I was just going to go for it. Wasn't initially something I wanted to share so publicly. I'm pretty private when it comes to my health, but I needed help. So I said, this is my last ditch effort to find as many possible donors as I can to get that transplant that I need. I want to graduate college in 5 weeks from today. I'll be walking across that stage, hopefully, earning my degree. I get to marry Tyler in May of next year and start a family. And I want to be teaching. I'm a special education teacher. After the next 5 weeks, I'll be certified. So I want all these things, but I can't accomplish any of those things without a new kidney. So opening myself up and being vulnerable allowed for the world really to see my story. And if it weren't for the Pittsburgh Penguins tweeting out a picture of it, I don't know what situation I would be in today.
And after the Penguins caught wind of your story and promoted it through social media, what kind of response and what kind of attention have you received? And is there anything promising on the horizon?
So yes, about halfway through the Penguins game, my tweet started going viral, I guess you could say. And I was getting just a bunch of random, so the phone number on there was a Google Voice phone number. And I was just getting a ton of, whether it was a supportive text message or finding out how they can help, how people can become a donor match. And then NHL.com reached out to me for an interview, followed by a ton of local media stations back in Lancaster County, York County, where I'm from, because the 717 area code gave away that I was from Lancaster County. And within the next day and a half, I had been interviewed by, you know, a dozen, maybe more, news outlets, did some live interviews, was asked to do some interviews for some articles, made the front page of our Lancaster newspaper. And then a couple of days after that, I made the front page of Yahoo News, and it just spiraled. And it's amazing. I've gotten just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of responses that I had a hard time keeping up with them. Even UPMC has reached out to me, and I'm working closely with them. I'm not going through UPMC for the transplant because of insurance, but they've been supportive, and they're helping me do anything I could need, including fundraising, as I won't be able to work for a solid chunk of time after my transplant. And as far as the promising outcome, I have no doubt that my donor is either being tested or waiting to be tested, only because I know how many people have called the Johns Hopkins donor office. Interestingly enough, I will not know when I have a match before the donor knows. They'll find out first because of things like privacy laws. So when I get a phone call or a text message or an email or some kind of shout out on social media, so did you find your donor yet? Are you still looking? It's yes, I am still looking, because I don't want to turn away any potential opportunity that could save my life right now. But Johns Hopkins can't legally tell me when they've found my match until it's time to go, basically, until they have all their ducks in a row and they can schedule that surgery and say, it's time to come into the hospital. It's time for surgery. We have your donor. And my hope is that whoever this donor is, if they have reached out to me already, when the time comes, that they'll say, hey, by the way, it's me. I'm the one that you received your kidney from. But it's their prerogative to also say anonymous. So I may never know. But that's kind of where things stand as of right now.
Tell us how people get in touch to find out if they are a match and to sign up and become a kidney donor. And you should already be signed up to be an organ donor. I'm a bit of an advocate for that. So tell us how you can do that.
Great. Yeah. Well, so some interesting statistic to start out with is that last year alone, there were 35,000 organ donations and organ transplants, yet there are 60,000 people or more on that waiting list for a living donor, whether that be kidney or liver is the other organ donor that can be living when they donate. And to donate to me specifically, for me to get a kidney, some people are a little bit touchy with who they would donate to, but to donate directly to me, they would have to be an A blood type. The positive and negative does not matter. Or I can enter into a donor swap program, meaning if I find a willing donor who is not a match for me, but say there is somebody else, in another state even, or somewhere in the country that is in need of a kidney, but they have a donor that's not a match for them. The way that works is Johns Hopkins uses that national database, and they can basically pair us up and swap donors for us. So it gets, more than one person off of that dreaded donor waiting list that takes 5 to 6 years. But if somebody is interested in helping to find a way to help me, they would want to call the Johns Hopkins donor office, in which that phone number is 410-614-9345. And they are more than happy to answer just questions, even if it's not sure somebody is willing, if they want to commit yet to being a donor. They can give information on just being a donor in general to somebody else on that waiting list, even if it's not to me specifically. But yes, there's a lot of people in need of kidneys. That a dear friend of mine just informed me yesterday that his uncle passed on the waiting list, passed away, just waiting for a kidney. And these are things that we hope to see numbers decrease drastically over the next couple of years.
Kelly Sowatsky, Pittsburgh Penguins fan and seeking a kidney donor. At KSawatsky3 is how you follow her on Twitter. You can find out more about her specific stories, to reach out if you want to talk to her specifically and get more information about being a kidney donor and an organ donor. Kelly, we thank you for your bravery, for sharing your story and sharing it with us specifically. We wish you the best at your graduation in a month or so, and all the best to you and Tyler in the future. And we'll be in touch to keep up with how you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. I can't express my gratitude in words what it means to have the help in sharing my story. It's saving my life, one share at a time, really. So thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Kelly Sowatsky, Pittsburgh Penguins fan. And you can get more information about her situation at KSawatsky3, and also that has the contact information for her about organ donors. And I'll emphasize again, if you haven't signed your organ donor card, please do so, because there are so many lives that you can save. It says, the great part about my driver's license and living in Florida is it has it right on your driver's license that you are an organ donor. And if that helps the process along further, then then so be it. At Hockey Unfiltered, at Todd Lewis Sports Twitter and Instagram handles. Lots to get into on a busy Saturday in the National Hockey League. We got you covered with the play-in game between Colorado and St. Louis. We'll try to wade through some of the situations of if this team wins or that team wins coming up in our next segment. Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis, back after the break. Sunday edition of Hockey Unfiltered with Todd Lewis continues right up to the top of the hour. Get you set for the Sunday games with Tampa and Boston in the afternoon, Vegas Golden Knights and the San Jose Sharks in the evening. Saturday, it was Washington with a victory over the Pittsburgh Penguins, a chance to close it out on Monday. The Winnipeg Jets with another road win in Nashville over the Predators. They, too, have an opportunity to close out their series coming up on Monday. Scott Burnside from The Athletic is all over the Winnipeg and Nashville series. You can follow him on Twitter at Overtime Scott B, and he joins us now. Have you left Tootsie's yet, Scott, and made it back to the hotel, or are you still out celebrating and enjoying the revelry?
Well, you know what happens in Nashville stays in Nashville, so I can't. It's actually interesting because I'm standing in the hotel recently vacated by the Winnipeg Jets. They had a little press availability this morning. They stayed last night after the game, and I just watched their buses head off towards the airport. So they'll be jetting back to, if I can use that term, jetting back to Winnipeg this afternoon. And we chatted with Blake Wheeler and Paul Stastny and head coach Paul Maurice this morning. And it was, once again, I don't think any of this is a surprise to people who've watched the Jets this season. But what they have done in this series thus far has been pretty darned impressive in terms of their ability to poke holes in a Nashville lineup that I think a lot of us, myself included, felt had the best defensive core in the NHL, had a goaltender who was going to win the Vezina Trophy, and they have at various times in this series made mincemeat of the entire operation, scoring 4 times in the second period last night en route to a 6-2 victory. It's the second time in the series they've scored 4 times on Pekka Rinne in the second period, and the second time in which Pekka Rinne has given way to Jussi Saros. And really, it's not even Pekka Rinne's fault. I mean, this is a guy who's getting no help at times because the Winnipeg offense is so dynamic.
And yeah, they've been absolutely surgical at times too. And it may be, I don't know if you want to say it's getting worse for Nashville too, because prior to last night, Kyle Connor didn't have a goal in the series. Well, he got going. Patrick Laine had the power play goal in overtime in game number 4. He had a nice deflection off the glove of Paul Stastny last night. He looks like he might be getting going too. Now, if Nikolai Ehlers can also get going for the Winnipeg Jets, I mean, that makes their task even more difficult.
Yeah, and Paul Maurice talked about it a little bit this morning as well, and certainly yesterday leading into the game with Matthew Perreault drawing back into the lineup. Really, this is as healthy as they have been literally all season, and certainly since Paul Stastny came aboard at the trade deadline. This is the first time that Paul Maurice has had, certainly up front, a full complement of forwards to employ. Matthew Perreault, very effective in his first night back, and you're right. It's just, like there's no tailing off, I guess, is what we're saying here. This is not. This is not a Jets team that surges and then disappears for 3 or 4 games. I mean, they have got it all going on, and they are a team really just brimming with confidence, and to win as emphatically as they did in a very difficult place to play, like Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, and now with a chance to go home. And really, I know it's all historic now for this Jets franchise, having won their first ever playoff game back against Minnesota, won their first ever playoff series. Even going back to the first generation of the Jets, they never advanced to a conference final. This is a chance, for a city that has been in full-on Jets party mode for an entire season, to go to another level, and the prospect of going to a Final Four in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And it's going to be, I can't wait. It's been terrific to be in Winnipeg and watch it firsthand. But I expect Monday evening will drive that wow factor up even further.
Yeah, no doubt, and good for Winnipeg. They've waited a long time. They've earned it, and they've enjoyed it this season. But if you're Nashville, okay, so now you have to go to Winnipeg and you have to win on the road again. You have to find a way to do it. They were successful in game number 4 by dictating the style of play in that, well, they used the trap. They slowed them up in the neutral zone, and it baffled the Winnipeg Jets, and Nashville was able to be successful. Is that the route you expect they will have to try to go again to get another victory in Winnipeg?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you are Nashville, you have to go back to a blueprint where you did have that kind of success. As you note, they won that game 2-1. The only goal scored by Winnipeg was the Liney goal in the last minute. So really a 2-0 game, and really, I thought that was not a game that Nashville built a lead and then hung on by their fingernails, and they really did not allow much in terms of sustained pressure by the Winnipeg Jets. I thought that was by far their finest defensive game of the playoffs. They moved the puck quickly and crisply out of their zone. They didn't get bogged down, which is what happened last night. Turnovers and rebounds that could not be cleared. And the Jets, so opportunistic last night, they didn't get those kinds of opportunities in game 4. And so if you're Peter Laviolette, I mean, I must admit I was a bit baffled that he went away from the winning lineup in game 4, taking Scott Hartnell out and reinserting Kevin Fiala. Not that Kevin Fiala was bad, but I was just a bit surprised that when you have success and you even the series as they did in game 4, why mess with success? But no one asked me. no one from the Predators asked my opinion before. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Scott Hartnell come back into the lineup, because even though he didn't score, I thought he was very effective. And Dustin Byfuglien, who'd been so dominant in the game 3 victory and who was again last night an absolute beast for the Jets, was nullified in many ways in game 4. Now, it's not all Scott Hartnell's doing, but certainly his veteran physical presence there, it was just a different change in tenor or tone in terms of how the Predators were able to defend the Jets. And so obviously they would like to get back to that. The key is, you can't fall behind. You can't fall behind the Jets, and that will be a tall order given the emotion that is going to be permeating the arena in downtown Winnipeg on Monday night. And so that's the challenge, I think, for Nashville. Listen, we always talk about weathering the storm. They can't just weather the storm. They have to push the pace, and they have to be able to get on the board and allow their defensive game to take over, to dictate the pace. They can't chase. They've chased a lot of this series. Even last night, the Jets scored first. The Predators answered right back with a nice Yannick Weber goal. But then in a matter of 5 or 6 minutes, there were 3 more goals past Pekka Rinne, and the game was lost. It was decided then. So the Nashville has to, I think, establish a presence early, and I think they have to score and force the Jets into a kind of place they don't want to go, and allow the Predators to play that kind of stifling defense that we saw rolled out in such terrific fashion in game 4.
I agree with you, Scott. I think that's a great description of how Nashville won game number 4. Is they didn't just hang on. Is they dictated how the game was being played by both teams. Scott Burnside is our guest from The Athletic, covering the National Hockey League. At Overtime Scott B is how you follow him on Twitter. It's the Jets over the Nashville Predators on Saturday night, with a chance to close it out on Monday. In terms of other lineup changes that Nashville may see, is there a chance that Ryan Hartman comes out of the lineup again? Because he's looked good at times. He's gotten into penalty trouble and gotten away from a disciplined game at times too. And I thought that happened last night.
Yeah, there's no question. And certainly the game was out of reach, but it was a frustration penalty taken by Ryan Hartman in the third period. He missed on a breakaway and almost immediately took a penalty, which allowed the Jets to score on the power play. Those are the kinds of things that the Predators they're not known for their discipline. I believe they were the most penalized team in the NHL during the regular season. They have at times this spring struggled to stay out of the box. And it's been such interesting to watch Ryan Hartman, who of course came over in the trade deadline from the Chicago Blackhawks, that in the middle of this series, of course, he gets suspended for a game for a hit on Carl Soderberg in the first round against Colorado. Peter Laviolette did not insert him back into the lineup. He kept him out for several games and then came back in. in this series against Winnipeg. And playing on the fourth line with Mikko Salomaki and Mike Fisher for 2 or 3 games in a row, right in the middle of the series, they have been a very effective fourth line. And again, both teams love the idea of rolling 4 lines. They have enough depth, they have enough skill that is when they're at their best, when both Paul Maurice and Peter Laviolette can roll 4 lines. And Ryan Hartman, I totally agree with you. I thought he's been very effective, had some chances. He scored the first goal in the critical Game 4 victory in Winnipeg. Looked like it might be the game winner right until the last minute. But he's also, discipline is going to be an issue. And we talked about how important it's going to be for Nashville to score first and to establish a tone. The last thing this Predators team can afford to do, especially early in the game, is get into penalty trouble and send a very, very good Jets team to the power play. And it's not just the top unit. They can send 2 units out that can strike at any moment. And so I don't know whether Ryan Hartman will come out. That's certainly something for Peter Laviolette to consider. But I thought we saw some of that backsliding in terms of the frustration and lack of discipline by Ryan Hartman in Game 5.
In game number 6, I suspect that it's also going to have to be discipline and not getting too overwhelmed by the wave of emotion for the Winnipeg Jets, that once they come into the building, I mean, you talked about the atmosphere in the building. It stretches for blocks around outside as well, with the fans of Winnipeg who have embraced the team is they're going to have their emotions under control as well to make sure that they're focused and playing the kind of game that they need to get victory and close out the series.
Yeah, it's funny. I asked Blake Wheeler that this morning. I said, you think about what it would mean. What it would mean to go to a conference final. And he's like, well, just all we want to do is focus on one game. We're looking at this. This is still a very good Nashville team. No one's looking at the implications of a win, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for this Jets team. They obviously closing out Minnesota on the road. Oh, no, they closed them out at home, sorry. But So they have experience with this. But I think what we're talking about now is a chance to go into uncharted territory. Team's never been to a conference final. So I think that's something that Paul Maurice will have to make sure that his group doesn't get too overwhelmed, doesn't try and do too much too early, giving the Predators chances either on terms of odd man rushes or early penalty trouble, that sort of thing. But what's been so impressive about this Jets team is that they are so resilient. You think about Game 3, and they got down 3-0 in the first period. Came back to win 7-4. This is a team that I think no team is immune to the emotions of these kinds of situations, but I think this is a team that is so well grounded, and their leadership group is so focused and so determined. I really don't think that's going to be an issue in terms of getting out of sorts or thinking too far ahead or anything like that. I'll be surprised if that's what happens in Game 6.
Scott, if I can impose on you for one more quick one. PK Subban, when asked about the game coming up on game number 6 and what happened in game number 5, said, well, we just got to focus on, we're going to go to Winnipeg and we got to win a game, and then we're going to come back here. And he was expressing his confidence, and some are now trying to suggest, well, he guaranteed a victory. I can't imagine PK Subban or anyone else in the Predators, for that matter, saying anything else except, well, our intent is to go to Winnipeg and win.
Yeah, the whole guarantee thing it's a bit of it's a well-worn narrative at these times of years. And I think back to the first round, and Alexander Ovechkin guaranteed a victory. He was right. John Tortorella guaranteed a victory for Columbus. He was wrong. I don't think you can I don't think you can pay much attention to that sort of stuff. And I'm with you. Like, what else are they going to say? Yes, we're cooked. We have no hope. That's not going to happen. So, and good for PK Subban for speaking so confidently. I thought Peter Laviolette really hit the nail on the head, though, in the post-game press conference last night. And he said basically the same thing. There isn't a group I'd rather go into a win one game situation than this group. And he pointed out, and I think quite accurately, this team has been built to play this kind of game. This team has been built to win a Stanley Cup. They went to a final last year. They added pieces. Mike Fisher returns. Kyle Turris is there. Now Kyle Turris has had a mighty struggle this spring, but they've been built for this kind of opportunity and to face this kind of adversity. Now, we're going to find out exactly what they're made of in Game 6, and they are playing against a Jets team that is yes, second overall in the regular season standings, but boy, right now the way they're playing, I don't see a team in the playoff field that comes anywhere close to what the Winnipeg Jets represent in terms of their focus and then their ability to hurt you in various ways. So, but good on the Predators. That's why I think people regarded this series with such great anticipation, and I don't expect that Game 6 will be anything short of electric and dynamic, and who knows how it's going to play out. Maybe you and I'll be having a conversation about a Game 7 in Bridgestone Arena in Nashville later on this week.
Well, I'd be okay with that. Scott Burnside from The Athletic, at Overtime Scott B is how you follow him on Twitter. I'd say enjoy Nashville, but that would be redundant. But thanks for this, Scott, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Anytime.
Scott Burnside from The Athletic, at Overtime Scott B to follow him on Twitter. Game 6 will be good. I kind of hope it goes 7. I'd like to see it go 7. And in fact, there's other series I'd like to see go 7 as well. We'll look ahead to the Tampa and Boston game number 5. And that's, oh my gosh, I don't know. That's the one of the 4 that I just don't see going 7. The other 3, absolutely. Washington, Pittsburgh, Winnipeg, Nashville, Vegas, San Jose. I could see all of them going 7 games. Boston, Tampa, maybe not so much. We'll talk more about that in our final segment up to the top of the hour. At Hockey Unfiltered, at Todd Lewis Sports, our Twitter and Instagram handles. Back with our final segment of the Sunday program right after the break.